This is the Ethanol Report, the industry podcast from the Renewable Fuels Association since 2008. I'm Cindy Zimmerman. The recent National Ethanol Conference highlighted a partnership for the Renewable Fuels Association that's cultivating a new crop of ethanol advocates among female car mechanics. Patrice Banks is founder of Girls Auto Clinic, and her She-Canics program is aimed at educating women about vehicle maintenance and the benefits of ethanol-blended fuels. She shared her story at NEC.
I'm actually an engineer. I worked for DuPont for 12 years, and I was an empowered woman in my 20s, or so I thought. I had a great career. I made great money. I had my own house. I had my own car, and I thought, I don't need a man. I was definitely really feeling empowered. But I called myself an auto airhead. That's how I felt. Even as an engineer, I thought cars were just for guys. You start talking about certain car terms like horsepower and turbo, and my eyes glazed over. I zoned out. And I didn't know how to take care of my car. And so sometimes if the car wouldn't start, or I had a flat tire, or a headlight was out, guess what's the first thing that I did? I called a man. And I'm like, can you help me? And it wasn't a very empowering position. It turns out I do need a man. And I didn't like the way that felt. So I started looking for a woman mechanic. I hated my automotive experiences, taking my car into a mechanic. I always thought they were taking advantage of me. They were going to upsell me on something I didn't need. Tire rotations. I'm going to need filters, fluid flushes. And it really just depended on my mood that day. If I was tired and just like, all right, okay, just do it. Or especially if I hadn't eaten yet, I was like, no, I'm not doing that. You're not getting me today. I didn't really know if I needed these things for my car. So it fed in more to the auto airhead and the shame that I felt of not taking care of my car well, not knowing what it needed. So I thought, if I find a female mechanic, I'll take my car to her. I'll feel better about my experiences. I'll feel good about my choices, and she can teach me about my car, and I'll be able to help a woman. So I asked family and friends everywhere I went, do you know a woman mechanic? I'd like to take my car to her. And nobody knew. So I decided to go to my trusted friend Google, and I type in female mechanic near me. And the first thing that popped up was the 10 top stock images of women mechanics. And of course it's women in bikinis next to muscle cars. Inspiring, but not very relatable. Or they had a young girl with grease on her face, wearing a jumpsuit, holding up a plumber's pipe wrench, next to a tire. So also just not very empowering or relatable. I couldn't find a woman mechanic. I couldn't find education, resources, services to help me make better choices with my car. But one thing I did learn as I was researching women and cars, women are the number one customer in the automotive industry by far. I was blown away at the data and the statistics with women in cars. Did you know that? The number one customer. Women hold more driver's licenses than men now across all age groups since 2012. So you know what that means? There's more women drivers on the road. I know that scares a lot of you guys when you think about women and how we drive. But it's the truth. We spend $200 billion a year buying and repairing our cars. We influence up to 95% of car buying decisions, and we're 67% of auto repair. That's a lot of power. But I also found out that women, 87% of us, are like me. They feel like auto airheads. They hate their experiences. They feel like they're being taken advantage of at the mechanic. They feel mistreated and misunderstood. And I thought that was insane. How is no one paying attention to your number one customer, the person who's spending more money in this industry? There wasn't resources. There wasn't education. There wasn't services. And being the engineer, problem solver that I am, I thought, man, this is a huge opportunity. So I decided to go back to school. I quit my job as an engineer, and I learned how to work on cars. I went into automotive technology. And I was the only girl. I was 31 with a bunch of 19-year-old boys, and I was learning about cars. And as soon as I was learning about cars, I was like, wow, this is interesting stuff. It's not hard. It's not rocket science. It's not just for men. That's what we're told as women. Cars are for guys. Don't worry about it. We'll handle it. Women can learn about cars, and we can talk about it in a way that's very relatable, and it's fun, and it's engaging. And I could not wait to teach as soon as I was learning this information. So I put together the Girls Auto Clinic Car Care Workshop. And I gave my first workshop to women while I was still in school. I skipped class that day. I remember I told my teacher I'm not coming, and they did deduct my grade. I got like all A's, but they deducted me that day, to be fair. And I went to the University of Delaware, and I gave my workshop for a sorority. And overwhelming, the feedback was so positive. The women were amazed at what they were learning. They felt so good about this information now that they knew about cars and how to take care of them, how to talk to a mechanic. And they asked me to come back to do more. And even the fraternity next to them were kind of peeping in on our workshop. They're like, what are all these girls doing with their hoods up, working on cars, getting their hands dirty? They wanted to participate as well. So I knew that it was my mission to get this information out to every woman driver. And that was my goal with the Girls Auto Clinic Car Care Workshop.
Banks spoke during a session at NEC as well as during the Women's Leadership Breakfast with RFA Membership and Marketing Manager Kendra Colson, who talks about how they got to work with Banks in this interview.
So at RFA, our marketing team was trying to identify new audiences where we could do some outreach, educate about ethanol, inform people, not the traditional audience that we currently have. And Robert White, who is my boss, actually found her a couple years ago. And they started a partnership. It was a trial run to see how that was going to go. And she started incorporating ethanol into her curriculums at her workshops, and it just took off from there. So that was about 2.5 years ago, and she has just reached so many audiences for us on the East Coast, mainly women, that normally we wouldn't be able to do ourselves.
So when she's doing speeches or at a meeting or something, then and ethanol comes up, she's prepared to talk to them about what the value is for, right?
Yes, she's able to present on the topic to conferences or news outlets or at her workshops. And at her workshops is really where she shines. I was able to attend one of her workshops in November and see the type of questions she received. She has a whole section about ethanol. So we stood on the ethanol section for about 20, 30 minutes just asking basic, business to consumer questions that we as RFA, as a trade organization, we know we're very technical people, but day-to-day things that normal people who maybe have never heard of ethanol before or didn't think that their car could use it, what color is the handle that I should be looking for? Does it work in cold weather? So I was able to see that practical application in real time at her workshops, and I was also able to see how she was able to talk about it and to educate her consumers on it as well.
Well, with the leadership meeting this morning, there were a couple questions there. What is it that people are asking when they talk to her?
I think they're mostly interested in her story. I think her story is it's just a neat kind of comeuppance. She was raised by a single mom. She started this all on her own after being an engineer at a large company for 12 years. So I think people were really interested in how she is achieving that, what are her plans for her future growth. And it's also really relatable. A lot of women prefer to work with women vendors. They seek out a doctor, they seek out a dentist that's a woman, and not seeing that in the mechanic market or the automotive market. Everybody had a story. Everybody had a story about, I went and bought this car, and this man, upsold me on this product, or this man said these windshield wipers were $200. So every woman in that room had a story. So it was really refreshing to see their faces light up when she started talking about the need for more women mechanics.
Banks says she's happy she's had the opportunity to work with RFA, but when Robert White first called on her, she wanted to make sure that ethanol was something she could support wholeheartedly.
He emailed me one day and he says, I think that your workshop would be a great partnership with RFA in teaching women about ethanol. And I said, okay, let me do some research on this. I knew a little bit about ethanol, but not too much. I didn't know who RFA was. So I wanted to do some research, and he kind of said, you're going to vet us? We're trying to give you money. And I said, yes, it's very important that I know what I'm talking about in an authentic way, in a real way. This community is very important to me, and I need to be able to sell them products and services and resources and education that they're going to trust, because they trust me. I call myself the #1 woman trusted brand in automotive. So I started doing research about RFA and ethanol, and it turns out Robert was 100% correct. This is a great opportunity, a great partnership. to get the information out there about ethanol and the benefits it has, just not for their pocketbooks or their wallets, but for the environment in their cars. And we have created and incorporated a whole section on fuel into these workshops. And it's one of the sections I get the most engagement and questions on besides brakes. Women want to know what type of gas they should use. Should they fill up in the morning? Is it going to save them gas? Should they fill up when, the tankers are there, refilling the underground tanks with gas? And of course, they always want to know, where can we get E15? Where can we find ethanol? There's not many in the Northeast. I hope we get some more up there soon. And we give away a RFA-sponsored $50 gas card for the woman who's come the furthest just to attend our workshops. And because of Robert and because of RFA, we have been able to now, I have hired 3 women to host my workshops, and I can pay them to do this. We're giving workshops in New Jersey and DC, besides Philly. And I've been able to reach over 20,000 women in our Chicana community with information about ethanol and the benefits that it has for them and the environment and for the United States.
During the Women's Leadership Breakfast, Banks said she loves talking about ethanol, and E15 in particular, and women love hearing about it.
So first we start talking about money, right? It's going to save you money, right? It helps drive gas prices down, and I talk about how much it costs, right? You'll save up to like 17 cents a gallon, right? And women are always looking for ways to save money, especially with prices of groceries going up. They're looking for ways to save money, so we always start with that. If you see E15, at the pump, choose that. You'll notice it costs less money. And even in our social media posts, you'll see me post a picture of the sign with the gas prices showing that E15 costs less. So we start there. Most people, especially young people, are worried about the environment. So I mentioned how it's better for the environment. It's sustainable. You're using corn. You can grow corn, so it's a sustainable fuel. When you use E15. And then, of course, we talk about how it helps the USA, it helps U.S. farmers. People care about people and helping them, especially as we're seeing sort of like the middle class shrink, and we're always hearing about these billionaires and tech billionaires and our tax cuts. And so we want to talk about ways that we can help people like farmers and how it helps. We're less reliant on foreign oil. So those are the 3 topics or the 3 issues we talk about. And that's what I tell them. And they're usually just sold on that. Like, I'll save money. It's better for the environment, right? It helps the USA. It helps our farmers. It's a win-win for everyone.
The partnership with RFA will continue to grow as Banks eyes franchising opportunities to reach more parts of the country. RFA is sponsoring an Ask Me Anything live stream with Banks for Women's History Month this month, for example. To find out all about Girls Auto Clinic, where workshops are being held, and lots more, go to girlsautoclinic.com. Read the blog, sign up for the newsletter, and you can also find information about it on the RFA website, ethanolrfa.org. And that's it for this episode of the Ethanol Report. Thanks for listening.